The practice that we witness, whether it is mental health or it's a conscious decision in the film, comes from this feeling of needing to develop a new belief to free yourself from old beliefs. You started filming, Ye, at a very young age. As a creative, to get an opportunity and access to somebody at such a high position in like, when did you first start rolling? How did it happen?
6 months after high school, and I really think it was a byproduct of my youth, which was rooted in, admittedly, naivete, and that's what allowed me to develop a relationship that fostered that level of access, I would say. I think a lot of times people like in his position are surrounded by people who are always trying to think about what to say next. And for someone like myself at that time, at 18, when I had started with that phone, it was very specific to know that what I was doing was to simply just listen and observe, and I didn't have to actually communicate. And in fact, I didn't really connect with him until like 6 months within the journey. That's when we started to actually have conversation.
What was the access point?
Well, social media. 2015, 2016, there was such a democratization of celebrity with the creation of the influencer, and kind of around that, a need for so many substrates of kind of tasks like content creation. And as a result, I didn't really have a voice yet. So I didn't feel confident to go to USC or Chapman or try and create a film. I knew that documentary was a way for me to find my voice and perspective. Eventually I found myself really pulled into the Ye atmosphere because my friends actually just took me to see a live stream that he was doing for the Madison Square Garden performance 2016 for Pablo.
Classic moment.
And I kind of saw that as like an epicenter, he as the epicenter of culture. And whether it would be him or someone kind of in his orbit, I knew that that was the thing that I wanted to go and document.
At what point in the process did you feel like, oh shit, I'm a documentarian?
Initially, I didn't really assume it as a identity. I was kind of in there thinking I just got access to like Warhol Silver Factory, and I was really just interested. I think that's what allowed me to capture the reality so much so, was that I wasn't trying to really shape a perspective or narrative. And that kind of goes against documentary kind of 101. But I think that's, again, what allowed me the access. And then, over time, I kind of found myself, finding my role in his orbit. I think once I started to see through lines formulate, that's when I started to assume the role and responsibility of the documentarian. One being like an album, for instance, 6 months, 7 months in, an album comes out, and then I'm like, okay, like there's a through line. It might not make the final cut, but at least I'm seeing something from the ether be pulled down into reality.
This project is dangerous to make in the sense that you were
targeted.
I'm sure, right? You were followed.
That's why I left the country.
Was there at any point in the process where you were like, fuck, I just wasted like years of my life?
No. Like, what else would I have done? I was so young, and I think like also you got to factor in the production. I was sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night for years on end, and there's a certain level of disassociation that kind of gets birthed from something like that. And I think like such a, I would dare say, profound love for filmmaking kind of just blurs the lines too.
How many years was the process of filming? Not editing, but filming.
2018 till 2022.
4 years. How many phones?
20.
20 phones?
Mm-hmm.
If I fast forward to when the footage is all done and you become story editor and producer on the film, right? Correct. Which is a very difficult thing to do. You had to watch everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not traditionally a documentary filmmaker. This is actually the first doc I've ever made. I would more so consider myself a storyteller that's gripped by urgency. 2022, so in the height of Ye's public kind of dismantling. Like I said, gripped by urgency in that moment, I was convicted that the story needed to be told, and I moved and we began the process of really watching the footage down, because before you can even story edit, you need to discover what the story is. So a lot of it is watching it down, interpreting, and then trying to make meaning out of life. I mean, this is not fiction. You know, it's a human being that's undergoing these changes and transformations. And I think a template that we used was just that classic Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. It's like this descent into darkness, and there's an ascension. We don't know what that ascension is yet. That's not our job, but what we have to do is go through hours, thousands. How many hours was it, Nico?
3,000 hours.
3,000 hours of footage we have to go through. And in order to story edit those 3,000 hours of footage, we had to develop our own system.
What was the system?
I spent 9 months watching everything back, and then after that, we would essentially kind of create selects on different levels in the timeline within Premiere Pro. From there, everything became transcribed. So action, dialogue, a tagging system we devised, both thematic and cinematic. From there, we then printed everything out and individually spliced all of these strips, and each strip would be between 10 seconds and maybe like 3 minutes, depending on how long the conversation / rant was. And then we pinned all these up, and we had 30 of these double-sided bulletin boards on wheels. We had 9,000 of these. And then from there, we basically created a paper edit, and then that quickly got us to a 30-hour kind of assembly, and then from there 10 hours, and then 6 was when we first made a vomit draft. That was essentially the process of distilling the reality. Even though this documentary employs the observational mode, we actually tried every single mode, punching in and doing narration and lots of poetic montages.
We're not using talking heads. We're not using voiceovers. We're not using text cards. You know, again, experimenting with all those elements to come to find that the real cinema verite that you see, like fly on the wall immersion, it can only be experienced through stripping all those narrative crutches, you know, out. But even say the nature of the subject even is asking for a specific format. Such a hyper-specific person that you can't employ these traditional tools. It just doesn't work. You know, that's what we were coming to find after 2 years of post-production. That doesn't work. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. Okay, so strip it all back. And then the story gets built on audio.
If you were to tell us in a statement what the story is about.
I'm still considering that now, but I do think...
I think the story is Ye and his relationship to America and America's relationship to him.
And in a way, the relationship of America to blackness is what he speaks about in the film, where he says, like, you know, they're trying to keep me enslaved. Even if I'm more expensive now, I'm still a slave to the system. So the undoing of that is very difficult because the tentacles of the system are really embedded in much of our experiences. Subconsciously, we don't think about it, right? Maybe he's able to bird's eye view America and what it's done to him and what he's done to it. And then he's questioning whether that's worth anything, you know? He just wants to burn it all down. Opening with that Jack Kerouac quote.
Dedicated to America, whatever that is. The whatever that is the ambiguity that I'm speaking about, that we can't exact, but we can give an interpretation of what we feel the story is.
You know, the angle obviously was rooted in mental health.
But at that point, it's not even up to us. It doesn't belong to us. It's become a product, and it's now in the hands of other people.
You guys watched it with Ye.
3 times. I watched it with him 3 times. We watched it with him twice. He said it was like looking back on his life like he was dead.
I feel like that was the final boss of catharsis for me. I felt, I mean, to make a film about someone's life and their legacy, and then to watch it back with them, it's an experience. I don't think I can even find words for it still. It was profound. It was profound and very reflective, and I feel we were all changed as a result and transformed as a result.
I noticed a pattern in behavior for Ye. When he felt shamed, like in his worst moments, he would try to fix the world right after. In all those 3,000 hours, like how many of those moments where you would see him, as someone who seems so unself-aware, actually be reflect and go, oh my God, like I need to fix this by doing this very ambitious thing that isn't real.
I was so interested in some of those externalizations of healing that you just had mentioned, whether it be architecture or even the apparel or the music. And I kind of found myself lost in the labyrinth of those attempts to externalize that healing. And ultimately, that's what led us to confront the footage and tell the story. I mean, there were an immense amount of moments that we're trying to externalize that healing. I mean, the level of access because of the celebrity granted him so many opportunities to address that. And I think me being so young, I thought that was the story for so long.
Hopefully it does a good job at cultivating some empathy for whoever's watching it. Specific to this era of his life, you know, again, it's a human being, and the identity is constantly in flux. All of our identities are in flux, you know. We just, you know, get to bear witness to this one part of this person's life. I think empathy for this part, hopefully the film achieved that.